The technology allows me.
Look, man, it happens. That's okay. We proceed forward. I used to be a software engineer, and man, it used to be a pain in the ass having to debug stuff. I'm glad you're with me. You used to come on the show before. We ran into difficulty with the tech thing, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work. After some practice over time, I figured out that I could merge StreamYard and Hangout, and it works. And so thank you for joining me, man. I am so glad that you're with me. How do you feel today? You doing okay otherwise?
Yeah, thank you.
And let me make sure I get this name right. Ehsan Safarnejad?
Ehsan.
Ehsan Safarnejad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why that is the case, but it seems that the English speakers, they do not pronounce the H of the E and before S or whatever. So call me Ehsan is okay. Like
okay, Ehsan. Okay. It's because we don't know, like the H is a little strange in our, lexicon in this sense. Like, for example, my name, Jamal. And when I'm in Muslim countries, they're like, why do you have an R in your name? It's like, my mom liked an R.
Yeah.
It was like, why is that there? No, man, I'm glad that you could join me. And just so the audience will know, he is Iranian-based journalist who shares an analysis on news geopolitics for Iran, Middle East, Russia, China, and the global South. I want to start off with a basic question that will be easy for you to answer, but will be very interesting for Western audience. Can you explain the relationship between the Ayatollah versus Pezeshkian? Because I'm confused by it. Initially, I believe that the Ayatollah had control over pretty much anything dealing with military and anything, let's say, overall command of government. Meaning if the government needed to do something and he needs to say, look, this is where we're going to go, this is the direction, then his rule is primary. It's almost like a king. I'm learning that's not true, that the government does have a much larger role in these questions and decisions than I realized prior. Pezeshkian, I'm not going to say anything bad about him. I'm just going to say he has a perspective, or there is a perspective that he is very open to looking for a friend in the West in a way that the Ayatollah may think is naive. What is the relationship here? How does this work? Meaning, I know people go to the polls, I know they elect a leader, that leader takes over and forms a government. How does the government, however, engage and interact with, I don't know what you would call it, I guess the main leadership of the Ayatollah's aspect of government?
It's a very loaded question, actually. It goes back to how the separation of power works in Iran.
Yeah.
Look, as you know, separation of powers is a fundamental concept in a democracy, because if you elect a leader, you have a totally democratic election and a free one. And then you choose a person who then have all the power in that system. It opens its way to make himself to be a tyrant, right? So that's why separation of power is such an integral part of any democracy. The way that separation of power works in Iran is that you have a leader, you have a president, you have the Speaker of Parliament, and you have a head of the judiciary branch. So as opposed to United States, for example, other than the three main branches of government, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary branch, you also have a leader. Now, I always find this analogy to be useful and helpful in making the American population understand what is the rationality behind Iranian system, because the leader is in charge of the military and the security of their nation. He's in charge of the long-term objectives of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the president is in charge of the economy and the the judiciary and the legislative branch are pretty much the same as, how it is in the United States. But the way that the analogy that I used to, explain this to the Western population is by first explaining the bicameral system in the parliament of different countries. Like, for example, you guys have a Senate and also a House of Representatives.
Right.
In UK, they have House of Commons and the House of Lords, but pretty much the same, system. Here's the thing: every senator that is elected in the United States is elected for 6 years, unless he passes away or something. But the representatives, they are elected for 2 years.
Right.
Now, the rationale behind this is that you need two kind of officials. You need legislators that are longer in their holding their office for a longer time to think about longer objectives of the country, and then you have the representatives to think more in terms of immediately being responsive to the needs of the average Joe, right? That's the notion. So that's some kind of optimization between long-term objectives and the short-term objectives. In Iran, as I mentioned, the Iranian leader is in charge of protecting Iran and maintaining the security of the country. And we got really lucky. I was just explaining this to another YouTube host the other day, that we almost got lucky. And I don't think that the person who wrote the Iranian constitution, Beheshti, or James Madison, I don't think that he was actually this smart. I think that he got lucky, because if you look at every country in the Middle East, they have been destabilized. Why has it been the case that Iran has remained steadfast and strong, and it has maintained its sovereignty? Because you have the leader who is thinking about the long-term objectives. The presidents, they are very easily intrigued by believing the United States and not spending money on the military. I mean, we had a president, Mr. Hashemi Rafsanjani, who said that the future of the world is about dialogue, not about missiles.
Right.
Well, interestingly enough, those very same missiles that President Hashemi Rafsanjani, President Rouhani, President Khatami, even to some extent President Ahmadinejad, they sort of vilified that missile program. That was the very same thing that saved us during the 12 days war with Israel and United States. One other thing, because the leader is in power, in holding his office for a long time, I feel that it is necessary for me to explain about the checks and balances that exist in Iran so that he wouldn't go tyrannical. First of all, you have the assembly of experts who can, basically sort of impeach him and remove him from power, right? So you have that, and they are elected by the people, right? So the Iranian leader is elected in an indirect election. You first choose the members of the assembly of experts, and then they choose the leader. And if leader does not uphold its duties within the constitution, they're going to remove him. But apart from this, the Iranian president, as you mentioned, actually possesses powers that are not directly responsible to control and confine the Iranian military, but in indirect ways he can affect them. What am I talking about? The budget for the military is determined by the Office of Budget and Management. Well, who picks the head of the Office of Budget and Management? The Iranian president does. So in that way, we have established a system that we have a strong military in the Middle East that is unfortunately plagued with weak countries that oftentimes become subservient to United States because they don't have a strong military. But at the same time, we refrain from turning that military into, a military industrial complex, the like of which exist in the United States. So that's our checks and balance, and the way that we actually refrain from you sort of maintain the power of the military. And in fact, if you look at the Iranian military budget and you divide it by the GDP, Iran actually has a very, very humble military budget. It's unbelievable how these guys have been able to create such a strong military with a very modest military budget. I mean, there's much to say, there's much more to explain, but I mean, for now, I think that suffices as the response to your question.
That is fantastic. Thank you for that. Because I didn't mean for the question to be loaded. It's just we don't know. And because we don't know, that's why, I just sit here and shut up and listen. Because I'm trying to understand the interplay and how it works, because my understanding of it was incorrect. Fantastic breakdown. Thank you for that. I'm glad you bring up the president. Why is it that, okay, let me explain it from the US perspective, from somebody sitting here. From my perspective, the United States is run by monsters. And those monsters went through and set the Middle East on fire with an explicit objective of reshaping the Middle East using American power. And that's what they did. So they destroyed Iraq. They destroyed Afghanistan. They destroyed Libya. They destroyed Syria. Sudan is a basket case. And they were always, going back for the last 20-something years, looking at Iran as one of the primary targets. And so from my point of view, it's like, okay, these people are monsters. You can't negotiate with these monsters, because what they want, regardless of whether they use nuclear weapons as a pretext, they want to take down the government of Iran. They want to turn it into a failed state. That was my point of view. That was the point of view of many people who were in the US. But that didn't seem to be the point of view of Iran. Iran's point of view seemed to be, we can negotiate with monsters. And even though those monsters have blood dripping from their lips after taking down Syria and after Libya and all of this other stuff, we can still negotiate with these monsters at our door. And people like me were like, what is wrong with you? They are monsters. Like, is it like, what am I missing here? Did they just misunderstand the US's point of view? Did they misunderstand what the US was trying to accomplish? And they thought to themselves, well, this is about nukes. And so we'll go to 60% and we'll use the enrichment for negotiation purposes, missing the fact that it wasn't about the enrichment. It was about destroying the state. What am I missing?
Look, I do not have intentionometer. I cannot infer what people think, but the way that I see it, because I hold the same viewpoint as you, they are scared. I think that the only thing that you're missing is the fact that the United States has the most powerful military in the world. It has the largest air force in the world. It has the second largest air force in the world as well, in the form of United States Navy.
Yeah.
And you guys produce, I mean, from the engineering standpoint, not from the standpoint of the fact that these arms are used in order to kill innocent civilians. You have magnificent capabilities. The stealth bombers that you guys have, I oftentimes used to say that United States is the only country that has established a real triad of delivering nuclear warheads. The only country, if that was before China starting developing its own nuclear stealth bomber. It was prior to that. But you guys have B-2 bombers, magnificent technology, F-35s. Even to this day, despite the fact, and I know that many people will start calling me all kinds of names for saying these things, but you have to be realistic.
Yeah.
As much as I appreciate what China has done, but take a look at Sukhoi 57 or Sukhoi 75, China's J-20, you will see that they have borrowed concepts from what you guys have designed in the 2000 F-35.
Yeah.
That's a testament to the ingenuity of the American engineers. And then once you understand how powerful, without going into some exaggeration, the United States military, in terms of logistic, distributes 300,000 meals in a single day for its navies. That's remarkable logistic capabilities. Again, once you understand that power, well, you have two choices. Either you become Pezeshkian types of guys, and again, I don't know whether he actually believes that or whether he's just afraid. But you become afraid of the military might of United States. Either you go down that route, or you become a person like me and say, well, I know that United States is powerful, but we have seen the things that they have done. We have seen how they have betrayed Ukraine, how they have betrayed their allies in Vietnam, how they have betrayed virtually every partner that they had. They blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. In fact,
Yes.
I was debating a girl and I was trying to explain them why, like, the rationality behind my opposition to United States and its policy. And I asked her, if we become Germany, a close ally to United States, would you then be happy? And she thought that I'm a moron for asking that question. She said, I don't care if we become Germany. I don't even want to become Germany. For us to become South Korea is enough. And I said, okay, so you don't believe that we could ever become Germany? And she was pleasantly nodding her head, yes, yes. And I said, well, they blew up the Nord Stream 2, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Yeah, damage their
So
economy.
no matter what you do, United States is going to get you. We go to that famous quote that to be United States' enemy might be dangerous, but to be its friend is fatal. There is nothing that you can do in order to convince the Americans, the American politicians. I'm not talking about the people. Just for the sake of our future conversation, anywhere that I mean the American people, I will explicitly mention that. I do not equate the actions of the American politicians with the American people. But what we were talking about, what you are missing is the fact that they're scared. They're scared, and they know that these negotiations, they will not reach any real or fruitful conclusion. But the fact that they have the defeatist mentality. They cannot perceive any other real way in which Iran could win, which is false. Let's remember that the radar in Al Udeid Air Base was attacked by Iran with a very, very spectacular kind of accuracy.
Yes.
We're talking about CEP, circular error probable, of a missile under 5 meters. That's a very astonishing achievement that the Iranian engineers in the Iranian missile program have been able to accomplish. But again, you cannot take the cowardice from these people. And oftentimes, now that we have reached this point, expect people to come into your comment section, or like even go to your Twitter channel and start calling me an armchair commander, because that's the position that you will find yourself. They oftentimes call people like me a hardliner. Why am I a hardliner? Because I want to see my country being independent, because I value Iranian technology, because I value the fact that Iran is an independent country and it should remain so, because I don't want my country to go through what the other countries have gone through.
Yes.
Because I take pride in the technologies and the power and the might of my country. Well, that gets you the label of being hardliner. So you're officially in the club. I want to welcome.
That's not being a hardliner. That's just being rational. And what I mean by that is everything that they have done have created the situation that they've tried to avoid. Meaning them wanting to negotiate, them being open to this sham and pretending as if this was about nukes was all done to try to avoid a war. And it has led directly to war. Like the appeasing thing just doesn't work with the United States. It just doesn't work. And so it's like, and Iran has shown deterrence in a real sense of the word, especially with the United States. As you brought out, the United States knew full well that they were going to Iran was firing missiles at the base. And Iran still hit their target. I mean, the US still couldn't stop them from hitting their targets. And even with all of the help of the US, France, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, knocking down Iranian missiles, they were still able to inflict severe damage on Israel. So, this idea that Iran doesn't have the capability of destroying Israel is nonsense. And for that matter, hitting US bases and hitting US ships, it does. And I suppose that the US knows that, regardless of what they say. So I agree with you. I don't think that's a hard line. I think it's rational, considering the appeasers still ended up getting attacked. So that.
Can I just comment?
Please
comment on one thing? You mentioned a very important thing. You said that the fact that the war has been brought to the Iranian borders and the Iranian territories, to the homeland, is a direct result of those policies, those appeasements, those concessions. Do you know when Syria was lost? Because most people wrongfully think that Syria collapsed in 2024. It didn't. It didn't. In order for you to understand when Syria was lost, you have to go back years to the time when Astana Agreement was actually signed between Iran, Russia, and Turkey. What's the story behind that, and why am I saying why am I making this sort of hefty claim? Well, the thing is that if you understand the history, back at the time, the former Iranian foreign minister, Mr. Hossein Amir Abdullahian, who passed away alongside the Iranian president in the helicopter crash, he was the deputy of the foreign minister of Iran in Arab countries, I think, if I remember, in African and Arab countries. Yeah, I mean, both of them. He has a diary. He has this book called, I mean, people have wrote it based on his diaries. It's called Sobh Damesh. Sobh Sham. The dawn at Damascus, the dawn of Damascus, something like that, in which he says that when the Astana Agreement was signed, the Iranian general, the Iranian national hero, General Qasem Soleimani, was furious. He was extremely against signing the Astana Agreement.
Yeah.
And he didn't want that to happen. But what happened in the Astana Agreement created a sort of safe haven in northern provinces of Syria, which gave the terrorists in that region the logistics, time, and resources necessary to recover from the very serious blows that were dealt to them by IRGC Quds force, spearheaded by the General Qasem Soleimani.
Yes.
So why am I saying this was an appeasement? There is a video of, by the way, in order to sign that agreement, Javad Zarif, former foreign minister of Iran, actually basically closed the Department of African and Arabic countries in the foreign ministry, and basically he didn't fire Hossein Amir Abdullahian, but he kind of set him aside. He was still an employee of the foreign ministry, but they took away his position. They closed down his department. They fired him in a way, but there is a video of Mr. Hassan Rouhani, the president of Iran, who says that Macron has called me. If you remember, this conversation was taking place.
What? Macron is called.
Yeah. Okay, so Hassan Rouhani during that time was trying to revive JCPOA because United States withdrew from JCPOA.
Right.
Pompeo proposed these 12 conditions, which meant basic capitulation. Within its provisions was Iran getting rid of its missile program, its nuclear program, basically everything, completely capitulate and surrender to the United States. Mm, This is a story being told by the Iranian president Hassan Rouhani. He says that Macron has called me. Macron called me and said, I have talked to the Americans and I have told them that for you guys to demand that they get rid of both their missile program, regional influence, and the nuclear program is too much ambitious. Forget about the missile program. Let's only talk about the nuclear program and the regional influence. Hassan Rouhani continues by saying that after a while, he called me again. He said that I've convinced them to forget about the regional influence and just focus on Syria. Let's talk about Syria. And Hassan Rouhani at this point chuckles. He said, ha ha ha, but we are even refusing to make concessions about Syria. We're even refusing to talk about our influence in Syria. At that point, the fate of the Syria was sealed. When Hassan Rouhani went on and basically signed the Astana agreement with Turkey and Russia. They gave as I mentioned, the terrorists the safe haven that they needed in order to recover from the blows that were being dealt to them by the Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. So I want to go back to this sentence that I keep mentioning. Some interviews are actually shorter than yours.
Wait. I need to wait. You just said a lot there. I need to process that. All right. Are you telling me that part of the negotiations that were taking place, they effectively gave over Syria in order to come to those agreements? That the U.S., he wanted to get back to the JCPOA. Donald Trump was not going to go back to the JCPOA. Joe Biden didn't even go back to the JCPOA. And the U.S. wanted effectively missile programs. They wanted, obviously, quote unquote, nukes, as they would call it. But Iran, under Rouhani, said no to all of it, but was willing to give up Syria, even though they never went back to the JCPOA.
Here's the thing. First of all, saying Iran is too much of a generalization, right? Because in Iran, the leader is against making those concessions. Rouhani and his fraction, the reformist government in general, they're bad negotiators. They carry out their commitments within a deal before the Western side starts carrying out any of its commitments. And this has precedent. For example, in 2003, Iran started unilateral suspension of its activities in all of its nuclear facilities. And then the Europeans, the European Troika, Germany, France, and Britain, they were supposed to go and verify that Iran doesn't have a nuclear program. 6 months turned into 2 years, and they said, oh, you know what? United States doesn't allow us to have a trade with you because, and in 2013, we signed something called JPOA. If
Right.
you go and read the March report of the IAEA, March 2014 report of the IAEA about Iran's nuclear program, they say that Iran has taken some voluntary actions in order to show its goodwill to the West. And a part of it was, if you go and read the provisions, for example, Iran stopped enriching uranium more than 3.87%, which was one of the provisions of JCPOA. And it started limiting its use of more advanced centrifuges. These are the main provisions of JCPOA. When was the JCPOA signed? JCPOA was signed in 2015, 2 years before the actual signing of the JCPOA. The reformist government started implementing the commitments, the bulk of its commitments within JCPOA unilaterally. So I know where the confusion comes from. You think that, well, they didn't offer you anything tangible. You unilaterally did that. But I'm here to tell you that you shouldn't be surprised. It's actually very much in alignment with the kind of behavior and modus operandi that we witnessed from the reformist government. So, but just to answer your question, the core of your question, no one explicitly mentions that. And you have to connect the dots. But from the standpoint of seeing him giving that interview, the Iranian military general Qasem Soleimani being against that policy, the Iranian leader being against that policy, the majority of the principalist camp being against that policy, you understand what has happened, which is, unilateral commitment by Iran that it is not going to carry out the finishing blow to the terrorists that are now recognized by United States. Ahmad al-Shara, former Jolani, the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria, is now removed from the U.S. terrorist list.
Yeah.
But Iran unfortunately didn't finish what needed to be finished because of the actions of Hassan Rouhani. Yeah.
That is amazing. I didn't know that, by the way. That is amazing. So he gave up Syria because he thought that it was going to give him better relationship with the West for doing so.
I think it's very tricky to know what Hassan Rouhani thinks because his actions are very suspicious. I'm not going to call anyone anything. Many people are very quick to call people traitors to the nation and things of that nature. I do not do that. And I don't really like doing that. But I'm going to tell you something. The coincidences that happen with Rouhani are very strange. For example, before Iraq, under Saddam's regime, invade Iran, before that happening, Hassan Rouhani was going to dismantle Artesh, which is the classic military of Iran. Iranian armed forces are made up of two branches, the IRGC and Artesh.
Okay.
And each of them have the divisions that the other militaries in the world have. They have an air force, ground force, naval force. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
Back during those days, IRGC was weak because it was just being formed. At that point in time, the main forces that were keeping Iran safe was the Iranian military. Hassan Rouhani was advocating for the Iranian military to be dismantled. I mean, not dismantled fully, but he was advocating for, many of its top military commanders being executed, being killed.
Whoa.
So that's the strange thing. After that, maybe I should provide this context. It was after the revolution, and many people were suspecting that these military generals would have some sort of loyalty to the previous regime.
Oh, I see.
No. But I provided this context to be fair to Hassan Rouhani, but it was a stupid idea nonetheless. After that, a while ago, some years ago, he was advocating that IRGC's power should diminish. Now let's take a look at what happened during this 12-day war. The main forces that were carrying out retaliation against Israel
IRGC
were the IRGC Aerospace Force, to be more precise. So, those coincidences are very strange, to say the least.
How is he overriding the Ayatollah? See, that's the part. That's where my confusion comes in. Because if you were in the U.S., the people would say, well, the Ayatollah is effectively a king. And as you pointed out, that's not true. That it's far more fluid than that. There are more checks and balances into this process. But it sounds like this was a choice made by the president and the president alone, and that the other elements of government were against doing this. I mean, after all, Syria was a shield on some respects. I mean, Syria was the step before getting to Iran. When Syria fell, it opened up the gateway in order to hit Iran. And so the fact that they were willing to sell it out or to give it over is pretty short-sighted, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. What we are seeing happening, I can pinpoint what each of these developments that you have seen within the last year since the martyrdom of Shahid Raisi, former Iranian president.
Please.
I can tell you when was the starting point that resulted
Wait.
for example,
You said martyrdom. So you believe he was also assassinated?
No. Look. This is maybe in Shia ideology. You believe that if a person, for example, goes out of his home in order to make an honest living, if he dies within the process, he becomes a martyr.
Fair
So
enough.
like, but I mean, in the sense that that Shahid Raisi, President Raisi, was doing everything for people nonstop, it actually becomes even more relevant because, like, people don't understand. The people who were accompanying him oftentimes would collapse from exhaustion. Yeah, he was working that hard.
Yeah.
He didn't took any Friday off. Maybe I should explain this. In Iran, the weekend holidays are Thursday and Friday. In your countries, it's Saturday and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
He never took a Friday or a Thursday off. He would go to remote areas in Iran and he would listen to the people, ordinary people who haven't even seen the mayor or the governor. He would go and talk to them. He would take notes and he would listen to them. He would take their letters. And even the journalist who would accompany him sometimes collapsed from like exhaustion. He went to Moscow, and when he came back, because there was a flood in Iran, if I remember correctly, it was the flood in Kerman, the province of Kerman.
Mm-hmm.
He straight up went to Kerman. I mean, this guy was relentless in terms of going and listening to people, you know, having like that kind of direct connection that you would want from a political leader.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we call him martyrdom of the servitude of people.
I see.
We call him Shahid Khidmat.
I see.
So that sense, there are things that are tricky and suspicious with regards to that helicopter crash. I am of the belief that people shouldn't use circumstantial evidences in order to, you know, issue a conviction, issue a sort of rule on something. That's where I come from. People have their opinion about that, anyway. But we were talking about the president's power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. Again, as I explained to you, and I mean, there is even much more to what we discussed. People oftentimes neglect the soft power and the sort of nuanced connections and relations that different politicians have with one another. This is a very crude analogy, but I was once advised by a very serious politician, never piss off your janitor. I said, why? I said, why? And he said, you have to understand, in Iran, the janitors also act as people who sort of bring people food, accommodate their needs. He said, the next time that you are going to ask him for a tea, he's going to urinate in your tea. So, I mean, in that sense, when you understand the subliminal and very nuanced relations that different people have with one another, you understand that when you talk about, for example, the president, you're not just talking about the president. You're talking about the party that is backing him. You're talking about his ministers as well. You're talking about people who have media empires behind them. You have people who, for example, some people in Iran don't know it, but there are these Telegram channels, these Instagram accounts that post jokes, daily jokes on the internet. And it's their job. 365 days a year, they post jokes.
Mhm.
But suddenly, when it becomes when a political event happens, suddenly out of nowhere, they start posting jokes about different politicians. Where are they getting their funds from? They are being funded by those very same parties that we are talking about. So these are like the nuanced relations that we were talking about. They can mobilize forces. They can start calling for people to go to the streets and issue things, demand different things from the government. The Iranian president is the head of Supreme National Security Council in Iran. I repeat, he is the head of Supreme National Security Council in Iran. The Supreme National Security Council in Iran is responsible for making the decisions when big and influential geopolitical events happen.
I see.
So when you see a person like me talking about how, for example, the Iranian president had a hand in diminishing the extent to which the Iran was going to carry out Operation True Promise 2, for example, when I talk about that, many people are quick to say, well, the Ayatollah is responsible for the
Yes.
military.
Yes.
Very, very funny. It's very funny because people who are in the West, Kevin from Alabama says me that he's trying to educate me about the political system in my own country. And this is unfortunately one final point in order to, I think this is a very crucial point to make.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the people who are pro-Iran in the United States, they have the same perspective about Iran and its political system that the anti-Iranians have. What do I mean by that? I'm saying that in that essence that when you talk to the anti-Iranians in the West, they frame Iran, they explain Iran as if it's a monolith, that the Iranian leader is in charge of everything.
Mhm.
Well, as it turns out, if you criticize the Iranian executive branch the way that I do, the very same pro-Iranians that were praising you before, they would also start calling you moron or all kinds of names in the book, because and their main argument is that, well, the Iranian leader does everything. It's the same mentality. Both of them think that Iran is a monolith. The anti-Iranians think that it's a bad dictatorship. The pro-Iranians, unfortunately, think that it's a good dictatorship. When the truth is that it's actually not a dictatorship. It's not a dictatorship. Once you understand that, once you go to and analyze, well, Iran has a judiciary branch. It has a legislative branch. The legislative branch passes certain legislations that the Iranian executive branch might not like, and vice versa. The Iranian leader says one thing, but he doesn't have the control over the economy. I'll give you an example. For example, during the 12-day war, the price of dollar went into 94,000 Iranian Tuma.
Wow.
$1 equals to 94,000 Iranian Tuma. You know what? Do you want to know something cool? During the time that I think it was Hemmati was the Minister of Economy in Iran, the price, this was during the time of peace, prior to the invasion of Israel, Israel's invasion of Iran. The price of dollar went to 110,000 Iranian Tuma. Yes. During the peace. During the peace, 110,000 Iranian Tuma. During the war, 94,000 Iranian Tuma. How is it that during the war, when the common census is that, well, the people will probably want to leave the country, so the demand for dollar would increase. And since Iran is sanctioned, dollar becomes like a commodity that is scarce. So
Right.
the value of dollar is not dictated by, those monetary calculations. It's defined by the emotions of people and the demand that they have. And a kind of a speculative bubble starts to emerge in that situation. How is it that the price of the Iranian rial, the Iranian Tuman, was more valuable during the time of war than the time of peace? Solve that equation for me. I'll give you the example.
The only thing I can think of is the public rallied around the government.
I'll give you the explanation. The Iranian president, when the members of parliament were going to impeach the minister of economy, he went to the parliament to defend his minister.
Mhm.
And he said, do not blame my minister. We wanted to negotiate, but, we can't. So some people, not me, please do not sue me in the court of law. Please do not wage lawfare against me. I'm being very careful with my words. So some people, crazy conspiracy theorists, they think that was an attempt by the Iranian government to exert pressure on the Iranian leader, who previously said that negotiating with the United States is dishonorable, illogical, and not wise. And after that, after the whole thing, the whole episode of the Iranian currency becoming so devaluated, suddenly he changed his mind. I mean, who knows why? But I don't know. Maybe I'm not saying that it was the case, but maybe the Iranian president going to the parliament and saying, we wanted to negotiate, but they didn't allow us. Maybe that had something to do with it.
Okay. Iran is a complicated political system, and I'm glad you explained that, because you're very right that people who are pro-Iran would also act as if Ayatollah does everything. I will tell you, even in my videos, they would be like, why are you going after Pezeshkian? The Ayatollah is in charge of all of it. And it's like, dude, that is not true. It is obviously not true. Because the Ayatollah had one position, Pezeshkian had another. And these two things didn't meet. Okay. So going forward, what time do we have? I've been riveted by this interview, by the way. I've been just fascinated. I've learned so much in this hour. Just to close out, we have about 6 minutes left. Where do we go from here? I mean, it's clear that Israel is planning another attack. I would imagine Iran is preparing for that attack. But the government itself, at the very least the reformist government under Pezeshkian, seems to still be willing to negotiate, even though they've said, we were not going to negotiate until the United States promises us that Israel won't attack us, which is weird, because it's like, why would you take anything that the US is saying, regardless of whether it gives you that promise? Meaning it seems that Netanyahu is preparing for another attack. What is going on direct in Iran itself, meaning the political space, what is being said, what is being done? Give us some context about the moves that Iran is making in this time frame.
Well, I just spent like rather long time ranting about how Iran is nuanced and every branch of the government does its own thing within the Iranian constitution. So I can't go on and be monolithic myself.
No. Just to be clear, I understand that it's a divided government. And I guess what I'm asking is, let's say the government itself in the context of the presidential branch.
I explain. So the legislative branch has passed 2 legislations. One of them is about regulating the microaerial vehicles, the small drones. If you want to operate one of those things, you have to go to the police. You have to get a permit. Once you have a license, it's okay. You can do whatever you want. They have also, and by the way, if you do not do so, they have increased the sort of punishment that you would be subjected to because of the experience that we had during the war. People don't know this, but many of these air defense systems weren't actually being destroyed by the mysterious and significant superior Israeli air forces. No, unfortunately, they were destroyed by these small drones who were using the blind spot of the radars because they fly on such a low altitude, and they took out the Iranian air defense systems. Russia was subjugated to the same method of attack, if you remember, when they attacked, it's a strategic bomber. So the people who say that, Iran needs to go and purchase, air defense systems from Russia, they're not entirely correct. Because if they were, they could prevent that, they would do it for themselves. So just one thing. It's actually more complicated.
Yes. Good point. Oh, good point. I'm sorry. Continue.
I'm not undermining the fact that the Russians have exemplary air defense systems, but it's more nuanced. People oftentimes just, I don't know, they make a very general statement. That's the first legislation. The second legislation is with regards to the use of Starlink. Again, you have to get a permit for that as well. Why are we doing this? Are we against freedom of information? No. Are we against the internet? No. The fact is that, again, a big portion of the Iranian air defense systems were also taken out by anti-tank missiles, from the ground. How did they do that? Well, they were controlling those anti-tank missiles, more specifically the Spike missile that is produced by Israel, through the internet remotely.
Right.
So that's also another initiative that is taken in order to make sure that the same thing wouldn't happen again. You can use your Starlink, you just have to get the permit for that.
Okay.
Because of the war. Another thing that Iran is doing is this sort of mass deportation of the immigrants.
I saw that.
It is oftentimes being, vilified and made out to be something nefarious. Those who know my position about immigration know that I'm not like an ultra right-wing super nationalist who says others are not deserving of living inside Iran. But you have to understand that unfortunately some of these immigrants had played a role in the attacks that Israel carried out on Iran.
Yes.
Moving the logistics, moving these sort of drones and things of that nature. Unfortunately, they had a role in that. I oftentimes use this as a frame of reference in order to give the people the understanding of what we are talking about. The population of Armenia is 3 million people. 2.9 to be more precise, based on a survey that was carried out in 2024, if I remember correctly. The population of the immigrants inside Iran is estimated to be anywhere between 6 to 8 million people. So 3 times the population of an entire country.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah, that's why I'm so mad at the leftists when they do not see Iran, being so kind to the immigrants, and it wouldn't deport them, even the illegal immigrants, had it not been for the fact that we went through the war and this happened. That's why I'm, again, so mad at the leftists who don't see all the initiatives that Iran take in order to, be a good country, be a good player in the world. But they just blame Iran for a subsumption of its problems.
Right.
So these are the things that the Iranian legislative branch and the Iranian police are doing. But what is the Iranian government doing? Almost nothing. Well, the WhatsApp, the messaging app by Meta, was unrestricted after the end of the 12-day war. And I'm against that, at least for now, because it is used in order to spy on Iranians.
Yes.
You could see the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro talking about that in his TV show. Apart from that, there are more things that you can say about the reformist government. And as fun as it is for me to bash the Iranian president, Mr. Pezeshkian, unfortunately, this is deeper than him. 186 university professors wrote a letter to the Iranian president saying that we need a significant and radical shift in the paradigm in which we govern Iran. What do they mean by that? Well, let's go through the provisions. One, you need to free and release the prisoners in Iran. Where have I seen that? Before the fall of the Afghan government in Afghanistan, when 17,000 Talib fighters were released due to United States deal with the Afghan government. Where else? In Syria, when 6% of the total prisoners of Syria were released, and then later on they played a role in the. To say they played a role might be an understatement, but they did that. So literally everywhere that I have seen the regime change being unraveled and pursued, this is one of the playbooks that they use, the release of the prisoners. The second thing that they talked about is that we need to have more of a free and open and more of an open economy. Well, while I'm not opposed to free market, which I'm getting lambasted for by the leftists, while I'm not opposed to that, but no one can say that during the war, you have extraordinary circumstances that you have to deal with.
Right.
People will hoard. People will purchase more than they need. And some people do not do it because of the fact that they are concerned, they're worried about the war. No, they do it in order to gain profit,
Right.
to make absurd amount of profit. But unfortunately, now they are advocating for less scrutiny of the market. The other day, I went to the market.
Wait, Ehsan, I hate to interrupt you. I have to close because I have a guest that is coming up like now. I have to bring you back on to finish this conversation. I am riveted by this. You have educated me in a way that I don't think I have with any guests speaking about Iran. And you have my deepest appreciation for doing this. Please let me bring you back on for this. In fact, after this interview, I would try to schedule you again for next week if you're open for it. Thank you for
Take
this.
care of yourself.
Thank you for this, man. This has been fantastic. And like I said, I am deeply hopeful that you will join me again next week for this. I will hit you immediately after the show today. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't want my guests to linger for too long. But thank you for this. Honest to God, thank you for this. And just for the audience, we know Ehsan Safarnejad. He is a journalist who shares analysis on news, geopolitics in Iran, Middle East, Russia, China, Global South. We will have him back on, God willing, and him willing. We will definitely bring you back. Thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me to your show. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All